أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. The year was 1935. The Jamaat of the Promised Messiah alayhi salam was spreading far and wide beyond the Indian subcontinent to various parts of the world. And the flock of Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam was growing in number exponentially. But with this expansion came trouble back home. Ahmadis in Qadian were facing a test. They were being persecuted. They were being threatened. They were facing political and economic oppression. An anti-Ahmadi organization known as Majlis-e-Ahrar, they moved into Qadian, and they said that they were going to wipe the Jamaat off the face of the earth. That was their declaration. It was a difficult and dangerous time for the Jamaat. And it was at this time that the Khalifa, Hazrat Muslim Maud Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, the promised son, he urged the Jamaat to pray, to show patience and courage. And then he told them to be prepared to make sacrifices. And it was during this desperate time that Hazrat Muslim Maud Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anhu wrote a poem. And one of the couplets of this poem went as follows. वो तुमको हुसैन बनाते हैं और आप यजीदी बनते हैं ये क्या ही सस्ता सौदा है दुश्मन को तीर चलाने दो, which means they make you into Hussein and they themselves are like Yazid. What a bargain this is. Let the arrows of the enemies fly. Respected Naib Amir Chairman Sahib and my dear and distinguished guest of the Promised Messiah alayhi salam, today I have been granted the opportunity to shed some light on the story behind this couplet. It is a story which is remembered by millions and millions of Muslims every year during the month of Muharram. It is a story that has inspired the writings of the likes of Mahatma Gandhi and William Muir, Charles Dickens and Leo Tolstoy. And as Hazrat Muslim Maud Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anhu so poetically wrote, it is a story that one group in particular is reliving today in this century, and that is the Jamaat of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian alayhi salatu wasalam. Today I will present the story of the martyrdom of Sayyidina Hazrat Imam Hussain ibn Ali radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu in the year 61 after Hijrah. Now, presenting the story of a martyr, a shaheed, it presents conflicting emotions, mixed emotions. Because on one hand, a shaheed is bestowed a distinguished rank in paradise, as we read in the Holy Quran in chapter 4. But at the same time, the circumstances of shahadat are usually very sad, they're very tragic in nature. Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, rahmahullah, he beautifully captured this dilemma of presenting the story of a shahadat by saying that it's like sharing a glad tiding that is wrapped in a bundle of deep grief. Now, as we know, Hazrat Hussain radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu was the grandson, the Nawasa of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is a particularly heart-wrenching episode in Islam, but it is one that needs to be told. Hazrat Hussain radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu, as we know, was the son of the fourth Khalifa, Hazrat Ali radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and Hazrat Fatima, the daughter of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Holy Prophet ﷺ, as we know, he had great love for his grandsons, Hussain and Hassan. And Hazrat Anas radiyallahu anhu relates that among the family members of the Holy Prophet, he loved them the most. Sometimes he would take them alongside him to Masjid-e-Nabwi, and while in a state of prostration, they would climb onto his back. The Holy Prophet once said, "Whoever loves these grandchildren of mine loves me, and whoever loves me loves God." And in another tradition, he said that both Hassan and Hussain are like the world's finest fragrance. Hazrat Imam Hussain was only 6 or 7 years old when the Holy Prophet ﷺ passed away, but he had the blessed fortune of being educated by the Holy Prophet in those first critical years of his childhood. And Hazrat Hussain grew up to be a pious man, a righteous man. He was known as a graceful speaker. He was known for his charity. He was known for his standards of worship. And Hazrat Hussain was a warrior. He fought in the armies, in the Muslim armies, defending the Khilafat of Hazrat Usman and his father, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu. But as we know from early Islamic history, it was also during this time period that dissension began to arise within the Muslim people. And after the martyrdom of the fourth Khalifa, Hazrat Ali, Hazrat Hussein's brother, Imam Hassan, he eventually abdicated. He gave up the Khilafat within 6 months to Muawiyah, who was the governor of Syria, and he in turn designated Yazid as his successor. So just as the Holy Prophet ﷺ foretold, Khilafat had now ended and a hereditary monarchy had now begun. Now Yazid was quite the opposite of Hussain in character. He was a worldly man. He was involved in drinking and gambling, many other vices. He was dishonest and unjust. In fact, Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ in his writings, he referred to him as Yazid Palid, meaning wicked or unholy. Yazid had no moral grounds to be the leader of the Muslims. And Yazid demanded that everyone take bath at his hands. And Hazrat Hussain was one of only a few who refused to do so. He would not accept a false Khalifa. But at the same time, he did not want confrontation. He did not want to fight Yazid. So he decided he would just move away. So he took his family and he moved to Mecca. And this is where the story of those 10 fateful days and nights of Muharram begins. Shortly after Hazrat Hussain returned to Mecca, he started receiving some messages of support from Kufa. Kufa was a city in present-day Iraq where his father, Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, spent most of his life. And these letters and these messages were urging Hussain to move there, to come to Kufa, where he can live amongst like-minded people who did not want to be under the leadership of Yazid. So Hazrat Hussain thought about this and he decided to send his cousin. His cousin's name was Muslim bin Aqil. And he decided to send him to Kufa to assess the situation and find out on the ground if in fact this is what is going on, that there are people, thousands of Muslims, as he is reading in these letters, who are willing to welcome him there. So he sends Muslim bin Aqil over there. And Muslim bin Aqil, he goes there, and sure enough, he finds that these Muslims are willing to welcome Hazrat Hussain. So he sends a letter back to Hazrat Hussain. He sends a message saying, yes, these people are willing to embrace you, Imam Hussain. Please come here. And so Hazrat Imam Hussain decides to go. And he departs with his family and his companions. It was a group of 72 people, and now they're on their way from Mecca to Kufa. But the situation changed even as Hazrat Hussain was on his way to Kufa. Because Yazid learned that Muslim bin Aqil had gone to Kufa, so he sent one of his own generals to find out what was going on. And his general instigated a reign of terror. He put down his iron fist and he told everybody that they had to swear allegiance to Yazid, and they went and executed Muslim bin Aqil. So all of those people who were willing to welcome Hazrat Hussain anhu in Kufa, they abandoned their pledges out of fear. The same people who said that they would welcome Hazrat Imam Hussain, they backed off on this promise. But Hazrat Hussain anhu had already gone on his way to Kufa, so he had no knowledge of this change in the sentiment of the Kufans. And during this migration to Kufa, Hazrat Hussain anhu saw a dream. And in this dream, he saw the Holy Prophet ﷺ, his grandfather, and the Holy Prophet was giving him instructions. So Hazrat Hussain interpreted this to mean that whatever was going to happen to him now, there would be no turning back, no turning back. And now the month of Muharram had arrived, and it was the first day. He was just a few miles before arriving in Kufa with his caravan when he was stopped. He was stopped by a battalion of Yazid soldiers. And the soldiers told Hazrat Hussain and his companions, you cannot go any further. Hazrat Hussain was surprised, and he took out letters, and he showed them the letters. He said, these Kufans are willing to accept me. I just want to move with these people. They have the same love of Islam that I do. They want to practice Islam just the way I want to practice Islam. Let me go to Kufa. But the soldiers said, we cannot. We cannot let you advance any further. You must go to Yazid and do bath at his hands. Hazrat Hussain said, I don't want to have anything to do with this. I don't want confrontation. If you don't let me go to Kufa, let me go back home. So he was ready to turn back home and go to Mecca. But the soldiers said, we have instructions. You cannot go to Mecca either. You must go forward to Yazid. Hussain would not do so. And instead, the soldiers took Hussain and his companions to an open, empty, dry land. It was adjacent to the Euphrates River, not far from Kufa. It is a place known as Karbala. And 2 more days had passed. And it is now the 3rd day of Muharram. 4,000 men now have arrived under General Umar ibn Sa'ad, under the instruction of Yazid, that Hussain must now leave and go towards Yazid to pledge his allegiance. But Hazrat Hussain refused to do so. Again, no turning back. More days had passed. And it was now the 7th day of Muharram. Yazid's forces now surrounded Hussein's party. They cut them off from all angles, and now they blocked access to the Euphrates River. That was the river where Hazrat Hussain and his companions would go and get water during those 7 days. They didn't have food to eat, but at least they had water. But now Yazid's soldiers blocked access to the Euphrates River. They had no water. It was a distressful and desperate time for the family and the companions of Hazrat Hussain. And at this point, it would have been easy to just surrender and do the bath at the hands of Yazid. But Hazrat Hussain said, death would be better than this. And it is now the night before the 10th of Muharram. Hazrat Hussain and his family had no choice. They had no choice but to take up arms in defense of their faith and their lives. He told his companions that night, he said, you can leave. If you want to go, you may go. There will be no judgment on you. But his companions said, we will not leave you, Hussain. So they all collectively spent that last night in deep prayer and reflection. And now the 10th day of Muharram, known as Ashura, has arrived. Hazrat Hussain is offering Zohar Salat, and then he makes one final call for peace. He says, let me go back. I'm not going to do bath at the hands of Yazid. But his plea was denied. He gave a passionate speech. The enemies, they were listening to that speech, and one of the companions of Yazid, one of his generals named Hur al-Tamimi, he could no longer bear the thought of fighting the grandson of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. So he abandoned Yazid's army and he defected to the other side, and he now stood alongside Hussain. And finally, the battle had begun. And it wasn't much of a battle. 72 companions versus 4,000 soldiers. And Hazrat Hussain, as is recorded in our history and our writings, they fought bravely. His companions fought bravely. And one by one, they embraced Shahadat in the fields of Karbala. And now only a few of the family members of Hazrat Hussain had remained. One of Hussein's sons, Ali Akbar, was martyred while he was fighting. His youngest son, only 6 months old, was killed by an arrow. And the last person standing was Hazrat Abbas ibn Ali, the half-brother of Hazrat Hussain. He was the flag bearer. And he sought permission from Hazrat Hussain to fight. And at that point, the grandson of the Holy Prophet ﷺ replied by reciting from the Holy Quran, فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ كَزَى نَحْبَهُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. There are some of you who have fulfilled their vow and some who still wait, and they have not changed their condition at the least. This is in Al-Azab, verse 24. So Hazrat Abbas, the last man, went into battle, and he too was martyred. And now only Hazrat Hussain was standing there. Before entering the field of battle, Hazrat Hussain placed the Quran in front of himself. He raised his hands and he prayed, Lord, you are the one I rely on in every affliction. You are the reliever of every difficulty. You have always been my protector, and I have always submitted before you alone. You alone are the master of all goodness. And Hazrat Hussain went into battle, and he fought valiantly, and finally was hit by the enemy's arrow and fell to the ground. The enemy gathered around him, and they were hesitant to kill the grandson of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. The enemy was hesitant to make that final blow. Finally, Yazid's chief commander named Shimr, came forward and struck the final blow. And Hazrat Imam Hussain ibn Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu joined the ranks of Shaheed. Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. On that fateful day, the barbarism and ruthlessness of Yazid's army showed no limits. It is reported that Hazrat Hussain was struck with 45 arrows, 33 spears, 40 swords. His body was trampled upon by 10 horses, and his head was severed and sent to the governor of Kufa. The man who the Holy Prophet ﷺ once referred to as Sayyid-e Shabab-e Ahlil Jannate, the leader of the youth in paradise, finally had embraced this title in Shahadat. My dear brothers, this tragic chapter in Islamic history has left a great divide in the Muslim world. And the question comes up, how do we, as Ahmadi Muslims, interpret this story? How do we interpret the Shahadat of Hazrat Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu in Karbala? And as Ahmadi Muslims, we need to look no further than Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad alayhi salatu wasalam. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, he foretold that the Messiah would appear in the world as Hakam and Adl, the judge and the arbiter, eradicating the differences between the people and uniting them. And we see in Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad the most pristine verdict. Because the promised Messiah ﷺ's love for the Holy Prophet ﷺ and his family, the Ahle Bayt, was unmatched. Nobody on the face of the earth had more love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his family than the promised Messiah alayhi salam. He once wrote in Farsi, Jano dilam fadae jamale Muhammad ast, Hakam nisare kuchae ale Muhammad ast. My heart and my soul are enamored with the beauty of Muhammad. May my entire self be sacrificed in the path of the descendants of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On one occasion, it was the 10th of Muharram. It was the anniversary of the Shahadat, and the promised Messiah ﷺ was in his home. And he gathered two of his children, Hazrat Sayyidah Nawab Mubarakah Begum Saiba and Mian Mubarak Ahmed Sahib. They were little children, and he gathered them at his home, and he said, let me tell you the story of Hazrat Hussain. And it is reported that as he was sharing the story, he was in visible anguish and grief, and tears were flowing from his eyes to the point where he was using the tips of his fingers to wipe the tears from his eyes, but he was unable to do so. He referred to Hazrat Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu as Sayyidul Mazlumin, the chief of the persecuted. And this is what he wrote. You know, there are those who criticize Ahmadi Muslims. They say we don't talk about Hazrat Hussain enough. We don't hold him in high enough reverence as others do. Listen to the writings of the promised Messiah alayhi salam pertaining to the immaculate character of Hazrat Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The promised Messiah alayhi salam writes, Hussain tahir mutahir tha, aur bila shubha wo un bargazidon mein se tha jinko Khuda Ta'ala apne haath se saaf karta aur apni mohabbat se mamoor kar deta hai. Hussain was a pious man and surely was from among the noble people whom God Almighty himself purifies and fills them with his love. He further writes, और बिला शुबा वो सरदारान बहिश्त में से है और एक ज़र्रा कीना रखना उससे मुजब सल्ब ईमान है. Hussain is from among the leaders of heaven, and to hold even the slightest of grudges against him can endanger one's faith. और इस इमाम की तकवा और मोहब्बत इलाही और सब्र और इस्तिकामत और ज़ोहद और इबादत हमारे लिए उसवा हसना है और हम इस मासूम की हिदायत के इक्तिदा करने वाले हैं जो उसको मिली थी. His righteousness, love for God, patience, piety, and worship is a perfect model for us. Uswa hasana. Hussain is a perfect model for us, and we are the followers of that guidance which was granted to him. This is from Majmu'a Ishtiharat. So my dear brothers, with these words, the promised Messiah alayhi salam has said Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu is a model for us. So we as Ahmadi Muslims should reflect on his life as we choose what sacrifices that we are going to make. What sacrifices are we going to choose to make? And while we may not be physically forced into going into battle or doing bath at the hands of a Yazid or a tyrant, we also will face situations which require courage, steadfastness, and patience. Because Karbala is not just a place for us as Ahmadi Muslims, it represents a circumstance that we all may find ourselves in. There is the easy way out to surrender to something that goes against your faith and be spared harm or embarrassment. And then there is the difficult choice. Should I turn back or should I move forward? Should I speak up? Should I remain patient, steadfastness, and hold on to my values, Islamic values? Our beloved Hazur said this himself in a Friday sermon. We as Ahmadis should display steadfastness in front of people with Yazid-like nature and be resolute. Only the Hussain-like will be successful. As a young professional, you are offered a raise if it means you can no longer attend the Friday prayer. Or if you're a young woman and you get promoted, but you have to take off your headscarf. Or as a kid, you are not accepted unless you change your name to sound like them, or change your speech to talk like them, or change your habits to fit in. Just ask yourself, are you bowing to Yazid, or are you staying firm like Hussain? And remember, Shahadat is not necessarily giving up your life for your faith. Shahadat does not mean you have to give up your life for your faith. It is establishing such a high level of relationship with Allah that once it is reached, steadfastness sets in, and then a person becomes ready to make that ultimate sacrifice. The Holy Prophet ﷺ once said to Hazrat Abu Huraira that if only the ones martyred in the way of Allah are going to be shaheed, then there will not be many shaheeds among my followers. And we see at the time of Badr that the Holy Prophet ﷺ asked for victory, and he asked for the life of his companions who were with him in battle. He did not ask for them attaining the status of shaheed by sacrificing their lives, because he said if Muslims were annihilated, then no one would be left to worship Allah. Look at the example of the great warrior Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. When he was on his deathbed, a friend went to see him. Khalid bin Walid started crying intensely. The visitor thought that maybe he was afraid of death. So he said, Khalid, you fought the enemy with such courage. Why do you cry now out of fear of death? And he asked the person to uncover his upper body, and every inch of his upper body was covered in wound marks. He then asked a friend to uncover his legs, and the friend saw that every inch of his legs were covered in wound marks. Khalid bin Walid told his friend, I'm not crying out of fear of death, but because I always wished for martyrdom, and the wound marks were a testimony to my wish. He knew he was dying on a bed and wondered if it was due to his sins that he did not attain martyrdom. Such was the high level of those who truly understood the spirit of sacrifice. So my dear brothers, the fates of Hazrat Imam Hussain, Hazrat Khalid bin Walid, they may have ended differently by Allah's will, but what they shared in common was that they both were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice to stay true to their faith. And remember the words of Hazrat Muslim Maud in 1935, "Ye kya hi sasta soda hai, dushman ko tir chalane do." See this as a bargain. If a tyrant is telling you to do something and you resist, see it as a bargain, and then let the arrows of the enemies fly. And we have seen these examples in the history of Jamaat Ahmadiyya. We cannot forget one of the first martyrs of the Jamaat, Sabzada Abdul Latif Shaheed, who made the ultimate sacrifice 115 years ago today on July 14th. On this stage, our respected Chairman Saab gave a beautiful speech about his life just a year ago. And after his shahadat, the Promised Messiah Islam prayed that his would be an example for others to follow. He said, Khuda sabko wo iman sikhave aur wo istiqamat bakshe jiska is shaheed marhum ne namuna pesh kiya. May God teach that faith to everyone and grant that steadfastness of which this late shaheed has presented as a model. And my dear brothers, this prayer of Masih Maud al-Islam was answered, as the last century has been a witness to countless Hussains facing Yazids, where their faith in the face of death was never shaken. Dushman ko tir chalane do. Let the arrows of the enemies fly. We cannot forget the example of Master Abdul Quddus in 2012. He was falsely accused of murder and was brutally tortured for 1 month in Pakistan and told to give the names of other Ahmadis who could also be accused and imprisoned in exchange for Quddusa being set free. But he didn't write down a single dot of ink. Master Abdul Quddus chose to give up his life instead of giving a false statement, thereby upholding the sanctity of the Promised Messiah alayhi salam's Jamaat. Dushman ko tir chalane do. Let the arrows of the enemies fly. We cannot forget the example of Dr. Muzaffar Ahmad, a khadim from Detroit who was shot 5 times in his home while doing tabligh just days before the US Jalsa Salana, this very Jalsa Salana that we are sitting at today. Dr. Muzaffar's attackers then set fire to the mosque in Detroit, but they couldn't escape the very inferno they created and they perished in the flames. Their plan, their intention was to disrupt the Jalsa Salana of the Promised Messiah alayhi salam, but their plans failed and 1,000 people attended the 35th Jalsa Salana in the summer of 1983 in Detroit, and some of them are in the audience with us today. Dushman ko tir chalane do, let the arrows of the enemies fly. Dr. Muzaffar's noble sacrifice is immortalized in the words of the 4th Khalifa, Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad Rahmahullah, who only a few days after that incident, he gave a sermon at Masjid Aqsa in Rabwa about Dr. Muzaffar, and he said, "And Detroit or America ke dusre shahron ke basne wale Ahmadiyo, is shaheed ko murda na kaho, balki wo zinda hai, और उस रास्ता से 1 इंच पे पीछे ना हटो, जिस पर चलते हुए वो मर्द सादिक बहुत आगे बढ़ गया। ऐ मुजफ्फर तुझ पर सलाम कि तेरे अक़ब में लाखों मुजफ्फर आगे बढ़कर तेरी जगह लेने के लिए बेकरार है। O Detroit and people of America, do not refer to the martyr as dead. He is alive. Do not step backwards even by an inch from the path which this faithful man traversed and advanced so much ahead. Peace be on you, O Muzaffar. Behind you are restlessly waiting thousands of Muzaffars to occupy your place." And my dear brothers, we cannot forget the sublime level of courage and steadfastness that was witnessed on May 28, 2010, when hundreds of Ahmadi Muslims gathered at Darul Zikr and Batul Noor in Lahore were ambushed while observing the Friday prayer. 86 souls that day left behind stories of bravery, selflessness, and will live on forever. Stories like that of Mahmood Ahmad Shad Sahib, the missionary of the Jamaat, who calmly urged members to recite the Durood Sharif as the attackers stormed into the mosque. Or Masood Ahmad Akhtar Bajwa, who while bleeding from gunshot wounds was attending to and caring for others who were also wounded. Or Sardar Iftikhar ul Ghani, who ran into a spray of bullets to save those who were behind him. Or like Nasir Mahmood Khan, who fell on top of a grenade and saved the lives of many others by giving up his own. Dushman ko tir chalane do. Let the arrows of the enemies fly. They tried to terrorize the Jamaat of Lahore, but they failed because the mothers and wives of the Shohada instructed their sons and husbands to return to Darul Zikr and Batul Noor the very next Friday and sit in the exact same place where their fathers and their brothers were martyred. The martyrs of Lahore embraced Shahadat, fearless in death and role models in life. So my dear brothers, and I'm going to wrap it up here, whether it's Lahore or Rabwa or Detroit or Jehlam or Kabul or Karbala, the Shohada are all testimony to that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us in chapter 2, verse 155 of the Holy Quran. وَلَا تَقُولُوا لَمَنْ يُقْتَلَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٌ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. And say not of those who are killed in the cause of Allah that they are dead. Nay, they are living, only you perceive it not. Karbala was not just a time and it was not just a place. It was a mindset that we as Ahmadi Muslims should embrace, to hold faith, the honor of faith and the cause of Islam dear to us in our lives, our wealth, our honor, our children, and all other dear ones. It is in the 8th condition. It is the bath that we have all taken. In a few months, inshallah, the month of Muharram will be upon us. It will be in September this year. Let us reflect on the life of Hazrat Imam Hussain, who would not accept a false Khalifa. He was martyred for standing for the truth, but his noble example is alive today. In 2010, Friday's sermon on the occasion of Ashura, the 10th of Muharram, our beloved Hazur said that we should always abide by the model of Hazrat Hussain to partake of a measure of the triumph that is destined with the promised Messiah alayhi salam. I end my speech in the same way that I began it, with the prayer that Hazur instructed us to recite whenever we recount the story of Imam Hussain in Muharram. It is a prayer that invokes the immaculate sacrifices of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam and our master, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is a prayer that brings solace to the Holy Prophet's spiritual and physical progeny, and that prayer is the Darood Sharif, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama sallaita ala Ibrahima wa ala ali Ibrahima innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama barakta ala Ibrahima wa ala ali Ibrahima innaka Hamidum Majid. Wa akhiru dawana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.